And what we know from a lot of the research into how students learn and why students learn, when there's a meaningful connection to the language, they're more likely to be engaged with, motivated by, and learn the language, or whatever it was, whatever elements of the language that you were trying to teach them. And intentional content. I like seeing things. Teachers are required to evaluate what they need to teach directly so that the classroom time can be used for other methods of teaching, such as active learning strategies, peer instruction, problem-based learning, or mastery, or Socratic methods, depending on grade level and subject matter. So, again, that's being thoughtful about what is it that I would lecture. So what can I put in the videos and what can I put online, and or send home with them, like paper copies. It doesn't have to only be online. And what would be better use of the class time so that it's student-centered. For the Socratic method, does anyone know the Socratic circle? This is sometimes very successful in university. You have everybody arranged almost in a circle. If we connected right here, we would be okay. And then you have two people in the center of the circle, and it could be the teacher or it could be another student, and they're talking, they're discussing a question, a concern in English. And what you do, everybody is listening. And what's fun to do to ensure that everybody is listening is, after a few minutes, one of the students switches with someone from the audience. So obviously everyone has to be like an expert on the topic, but they all have to be listening, because if they're chosen to go in next, they have to be able to pick up immediately where that other student left off. So that's this is one of the ways to do the Socratic circle. And they find it interesting because a lot of students, especially when they're more in the upper levels, enjoy this activity. Lower levels I wouldn't necessarily do this with, because it may put too much pressure on them if they do not feel confident in their English ability, and or maybe they don't really have the ability to hold a sustained conversation at that point. So finally, number 4, the last of the pillars, is professional educators. So you will never be replaced as a teacher, because the point of the flipped classroom is not to get rid of the teacher like a MOOC, right? The point of the flipped classroom is that you're still needed to manage what goes on in the classroom. You're still choosing the activities that would best work for your students. You're still making sure the students are on task. You're still evaluating the students. There's no replacement for the teacher.
Yes.
It's a must. So for those people who are, I've noticed there is a lot of resistance to flipped classroom and flipped classes, because people are like, well, what's the point? Like, why would you need a teacher if you flip? You still absolutely need someone to manage the class. You don't get rid of a teacher. Okay, so that's the 4 pillars. These are some challenges that they mentioned. And the first one I was not really thinking of. Well, actually, this was actually what I just mentioned. The fear that flipped classrooms will further standardize instruction and lead to further the privatization of education and elimination of most teachers. I don't see that happening. I mean, I don't think that we are at a point in any way where we would just eliminate teachers. So I think that fear is fairly unfounded. You still need a form of assessment. You still need someone to manage the class. Did you want to add something?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I
Yeah,
just
no,
wanted
I'm
to
happy.
say that here in this point, also the student's opinion again is important, because even if we are not scared, because we understand that we are teaching speaking, and they need to know how to communicate and so on. It's not just something that's like mathematics that you can learn the theory and then be able to add and multiply.
Right.
But the students might not understand. Like they would say, "Oh my God, why do I pay her if she can't even explain present simple to me? She asked me to read it myself." Like this.
That's a good point, and it's interesting that you brought that up, because there are a lot of people who have talked about how we have moved to more learner-centered or learner responsibility. So people like Penny H. Douglas Brown, a whole bunch of people that I'm also not mentioning, but basically what they were looking at is there's been a shift in teacher responsibility and learner responsibility. And one of the outcomes in this is that we actually actively have to teach our learners how to be more responsible for their own learning process. And part of that would be having this conversation with them about why I'm not going to waste your time going over this grammar point with you in class, because you can learn it at home and we can practice it here where I can actually help you. And then at home you have access to the same presentation and maybe other presentations, so if you didn't get it, you can watch it again and again and again until you get it. And you can do practice activities again and again and again until you get it, because again, the idea is mastery, not just like, oh, I sort of understand this element, so now let's learn this new element that if I don't have a solid foundation in this A, I can't do B, but we have to do B because it's in the curriculum next, right? So I think when students understand that, if they're older, they are more willing to be okay with it. But it has to be presented, and this way of learning has to be taught actively, indirectly and directly. Unequal access to technology among the students is a big problem, obviously. A lot of universities have labs that the students can go to use this information. A lot of secondary schools and primary schools have labs, but if yours doesn't, that would be a problem. And if the students live a very far distance and they couldn't stay at the lab because they would get home after dark or it takes too long or whatever, that's also a problem. So this is something that needs to be thought about, and how to solve this problem. So another is kind of motivation. So when the students go home and they're watching the videos, are they really going to go home and watch the videos? Right? So ideally they do, but you and I both know that that's an ideal. A lot of students won't necessarily go home and watch the video, even though they need to watch it to be able to do what they're going to do in class. So this is a challenge that still has to be thought about. And next week, actually, you will have workshops on Tuesday and Wednesday as well. I won't actually be here. I've pre-recorded the workshop, and it's like a movie. It will play. And I'm talking about independent learning. So we're re-exploring this topic. We've talked about it previously. For some of you, it may be a review, but I go through enough detail so that if you've not been here before, you'll gather all of the meaning. And then this group came up actually with a great way to assess students that gets them excited about actually participating in quizzes online and videos. And they use a form of gamification. So I talk in a lot more detail about what that looks like next week. So if you come back again, it's Tuesday and Wednesday.